bigger critters and pretty prints. So these are raccoons, of course, or at least critters that have left raccoon prints. So, because we can never quite be sure that it is actually raccoons, because we didn't see it. That's kind of the pathway. So, again, Ninja checking out to make sure the path is safe for me. That's our only task. Ah, yes, more footprints. It's really interesting though. You have these, and you have the smaller ones, like that. Ming here. So I had some questions from people on the page who didn't know what an adjustable ND filter was. So I'm going to look at that for a little bit. One of the things that we use an adjustable ND filter for is, I'm going to record some of this so that you can see what I'm doing. Essentially what I'm doing at this point is I've got this up to a 16 here in order to be able to shoot this at 50 frames per second with a shutter speed of 1/100. Basically, when we're looking for movement and so forth that's natural, we want the shutter speed to be twice the frame rate to get kind of a natural movement that our eyes generally are used to seeing. So if it's 50 frames per second, we're looking at 100 shutter. In order to be able to do that on this, I have to crank up the f-stop to 16, and that doesn't always come out to the best look, especially if I'm trying to do something with a background blur. Now, the nice thing about an adjustable ND filter, and let's look at it over here, this is an adjustable ND filter, and it is from SLR Magic, and it's a 77 millimeter. It's got an adjustable filter, so that when I put it on the actual lens, you're going to see a difference between how much light is allowed in. And so this one is specifically built for this particular lens, so the 10 millimeter SLR Magic lens. It normally doesn't come with the Velcro. That's what I use for putting on my own matte box, so ignore that part. But this, and again, this is adjustable, so I can move this a little bit if I want this lever to be down here. I'll just move it like that. So what this does is it can close off the amount of light going into the lens, or through the lens, as you can see. So, okay. So when I have this on, and now especially since everything's really bright, what I can still do is I can reduce my f-stop. So let's go to 2.8 and see what I can do as far as damage. So now I've got a 2.8, and I can adjust this. If you look at the actual display, you look at the histogram, as I move this, you'll see that it actually will put everything else into an exposure range, which actually works for me later in post-production. And that means also that what occurs in the background, so I'm going to reduce this to 2.1 here on the f-stop manually, and so that means I'm reducing it here and basically exposing it. So, and you'll see now that what we have in the foreground, and I can focus this, really is detailed in contrast to the blur in the background, so it increases our blur in the background. But this makes it so that I don't have to, one, crank up the f-stop so high that I lose the ability to have a background that is blurred. And right now, yeah, this is actually looking really good. And I'm just adjusting things slightly with we're going to leave it at 2.8. I'm going to adjust this even a little bit more. And then we'll adjust the focus. So now that she's in focus there, you can see that the background gives me a specific kind of blur. All you have to do, even on regular lenses, you just build it up like this with these rings, step-up rings. And this is a 1.7, I believe. And what we're looking for here is basically we're just mating that to all the step-up rings. And that allows me the same functionality. So this particular lens has a different characteristics, different qualities, and you can see, can you actually see the transmission through that? Is that changing a little bit? Good.
The very extreme.
Yeah. So that's how it actually does that. It moves those polarization filters basically and changes it so that it allows a certain amount of light to transmit through there. The nice thing about this particular one, because I've seen other people with other ND filters will have this cross pattern in certain scenes once they expose this high and have a wide open lens. I do not get that with this particular one. So this is really actually quite good. It's not the cheapest. Again, the SLR Magic, but it actually takes place of you got 6 different filters that you can adjust on there, and the fact that it is adjustable. So I'm going to switch this out here for a second. So now I'm going to boot this up. So now I have the ND filter put on here, and we're looking at a particular f-stop, and this gives me the blur in the background that I want, but keeps what I need in focus sharp. And again, this is just the Panasonic lens, so there is a difference. And change this to 1.7. And so now I've moved it to the extreme, which is 1.7, which means I've opened up the aperture on the camera quite high, and you can see the difference between what's in the foreground, what's in the background, and what's actually being kept in focus. The ND filter allows me to do that, the adjustable ND filter, and the nice thing about that again is I can adjust that on the fly. So if I want to gain that exposure, I'll pull that like that, and then I'll just increase the f-stop, and things become more in focus across a greater range. So that is the ND filter, variable ND filter. You get basically 6 filters in one, so if you're looking at the cost, I think it's about $150. Depends on when you get it. I got it when it was much cheaper back in the early days, and but it saves you a lot of money in the long run. You don't also have to switch out, take time to switch from one to another, especially if you're shooting something on the fly. You can just spin that dial just a bit, and it really helps out in your production speed. So it's definitely something worth looking into if you're wanting to make sure that you have good shallow depth of field and that background blur. There are some times where that just looks beautiful, and it's really something to help the foreground stand out quite a bit, or to transition from foreground to background. So if you like this, please thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. If you have any other questions on that, please let me know. And That's it.